Is the volume up?
Welcome, everyone, to Buddha's Center. My name is Jeff Allen, and this evening we're talking about the stages of the path that are necessary to engage in order to become a Buddha. So, before we get started with the actual teaching and the instruction, let's get into a meditative posture that we've gone over many, many times in order to get our minds and our body as focused and able to engage in the listening of this Dharma to the highest of our potential. So it's said when we get into a very specific meditation posture, it makes our minds much more clear, and it will enable us to then investigate these topics thoroughly and get single pointed concentration. And then our bodies will eventually, when we become more accustomed to this position, fall in line with our mind's ability to meditate for longer periods of time. So real quickly, the 7-point Vairocana posture, we put our legs preferably into the lotus position, cross-legged or legs on the floor, whatever we can do with our physical limitations, but preferably the lotus posture. We put our right hand on our left with our thumbs touching, making kind of a diamond, and put it into our lap. Have your back very, very straight. It's said that your vertebrae should be like a stack of coins. So we get it very, very straight. We don't want our back arched. We don't want to be hunched over. We want to have our back very, very straight. Shoulders in a comfortable position that allow for our arms, our elbows to kind of bow out but still in a comfortable fashion. We shouldn't force this position. So we have our legs, we have our hands, we have our back, we have our shoulders. Now we put our head into a comfortable position, but slightly tilted forward. We don't want it back. We don't want it forward. We're trying to keep our posture aligned. We're keeping our back very straight, but we're tilting our head slightly forward. Now with our eyes, we don't want our eyes closed. I know that may sound strange, but we have to keep our eyes open slightly so we don't tell our minds that we're going to try to go to sleep or just try to relax. The point of meditation is getting to a very, very clear place that's very calm simultaneously. It's not just a kind of a blissed out calm place that's sleepy. It's a place from which one can become like a laser when combined with wisdom. So we don't want our eyes closed because this can force us into kind of a sleepy state. But if our eyes are too open, it'll make us think and look around at the things that we see, and that'll cause kind of a distraction in our mind. It'll cause excitement in our mind. And we're trying to get rid of excitement, and we're trying to get rid of laxity or lethargy, which are two kind of enemies to our meditation. So we're trying to really be able to focus singly our minds on one object. And we don't do that with our sense consciousness. We do that with our mental consciousness. So we're training our minds. So we're using kind of the tools within our physical body as supports for that eventual training of completely of just the mind. So we have our eyes slightly open, and it's said 45-degree angle, kind of at the tip of our nose. So then we got our mouths, which is the 7th point, into a comfortable position with our tongue on the top of the roof, with our, kind of against the teeth. And this will allow for circulation of the saliva. And then we are going to be breathing in and out through our nose, not through our mouth. And this will allow for our mouth not to dry out as we sit for longer and longer periods of time. So this is the 7-point Vairocana posture, as just mentioned before. And I've explained it many times on many videos with the reasonings behind it as well. So you can check into those previous teachings on that. So we get into the 7-point Vairocana posture and begin breathing in and out through your nose only. Doing it in a very unforced fashion, just the normal way you would breathe. You don't want to, hear it like very strong because that becomes a distraction to meditation. You're trying to just focus on the in and out of the breath and doing it in a very natural way. Not breathing in too quickly, because if you had to do that over and over again, it would make you dizzy, and it may even fool you into thinking that you're in some calm, tranquil state when you've just gotten some sort of similar to a runner's high. So you want to breathe in and out in a very even fashion, but not so slowly that you feel like you're not getting enough breath. So I think you're getting my point. So you're breathing through your nose, bringing it all the way to the top of the breath, filling your lungs and your diaphragm. And as you get to the top of that breath, exhale and count 1. Again, repeat. Inhale through the nose all the way to the top of the breath. Exhale, 2. And what we're focusing on is the breath and the counting at this point only. If we find our mind straying and starting to think about something other than the breath or the counting, we need the mindfulness to bring that right back into place to know, oh, the object, the focal object that I'm not forgetting is the breath, and making sure that now I've increased my numbers. That number is telling me that I'm still on the breath, and I'm mindfully aware that it's rising up. And this will let us know as we do this more and more and more in our morning meditation. It says to start with around 21, 21 breaths, and then stop. And then, do something else, and then maybe do another session with 21 breaths. You want to get very, very good and competent at keeping your mind in that place. It's about 1.5 minutes, all we're talking about. So we're going to be breathing in and out through our nose just to get our minds to a relaxed, calm space from which we can grow virtue, from which we can really hear the teachings. If our mind isn't calm, if we're not able to truly focus, then we're listening to the teaching with one among the 3 faults, the 3 faulty pots. If a pot's upside down, it's like us not listening at all because we're not paying attention. It's not something that would hold water and be suitable to drink out of. So that's a faulty pot. If a pot has a little bit of a leak in it, it's kind of like when we're not listening completely and we're going to forget. We may be listening, but we're not listening well enough that we won't forget what we're hearing. So it's like a pot with a leak in it. You'll get a little bit of sip of water, but before you're completely quenched, the water will have run out the hole. We don't want to have that going on, and we don't want to come in here with all of our thoughts and conceptualities and wrong ideas and saying, is he going to say this right or that right? Pabongka Rinpoche in the Lam Rim said this is really for to nourish our mind and change our mind, not for checking. In terms of was that the 37th division or not? It's to change our mind. It's for us to transform this contaminated mind into one that has renunciation and love and compassion and this correct view of emptiness. So we're really trying to have an open mind to allow the teaching to do that to us. And if we come in with all these preconceived notions, it's like having a pot that has some sort of, filth inside of it. That's not suitable for drinking because the water that we're wanting to drink to quench our thirst with is contaminated. It's not the actual water that we're wishing to get because it's going through the filter when we look at it in terms of our contaminated ideas, the filter of our contaminated ideas, and then now what we think we've heard is mixed up. So we have to make sure our mind's in a calm enough place to be able to actually hear these instructions so we know that we're an ill person, the teacher's like a doctor, the Dharma is like medicine. We need to practice and take this medicine so our mind has to be calm enough to hear it, to get the wisdom arisen from hearing, which is the first taking of the medicine that we can partake in from our side. And then we engage in analysis that we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. And we see that, how wonderful these great beings, these Buddhas are that we wish to become, how great they are, how incredible they are, and may these teachings stay in this world. And may I be part of that by realizing the Dharma in my mind stream. So these are the things that we want to be able to come to the teaching with. And this is why we calm our minds down at the beginning and start with the virtuous object of Buddha Shakyamuni and start from there so that we can hopefully have the wisdom arisen from hearing so that we can then get the wisdom arisen from analysis or or contemplation, and then get the actual wisdom arisen from meditation, that actual realization, the substantial thing that when we look at it in terms of emptiness, the realization of emptiness, that wisdom arisen from meditation, from that yogic direct perception, is the thing that will cut the root of our suffering. The others aid it in it, get it, in what that cutting will allow us to realize. But we need to be able to have that wisdom arisen from meditation in order to cut that root of cyclic existence, in order to see emptiness directly, to not only have it from a cognitive perspective, from a conceptual perspective. We need to be able to have it from from the perspective of a prime cognition, a valid cognition, a direct valid cognition of the nature of reality that happens with our mind, that happens from a yogic direct perception. But that can only happen if we have this inference that comes, this inferential valid cognition that will allow us to directly perceive that eventually. So the only way that can happen is if we hear this stuff right. We have the right thing to think about. And we'll talk about that after. So let's start breathing in and out and counting the breath. So that's going to be our starting point, and calming our minds, and any distraction, any sleepiness that comes in, bring it back to the clarity of the breathing in and out and the counting. Any excitement that comes in, anything that you're thinking about that isn't the breathing or the counting, let mindfulness grab that object of the breath, grab the number, and bring it back to you. So let's sit for a moment and breathe in and out, and get our minds to a focused, calm place where we can engage in critical thinking, and we can really, really transform our minds. Now imagine the image of Buddha Shakyamuni in the space in front of you. Buddha Shakyamuni is the Buddha of our time, who you see in the image right behind me, above my head. Imagine with your mind this image while you're breathing in and out, and being mindful of the number still. Breathing in and out while visualizing Buddha Shakyamuni in the front generation, about 2 feet in front of you, at eye height, about a thumb height tall in terms of the image. And imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni is radiant and glowing, a perfect light body, 3-dimensional image. Now imagine, as you're breathing in and out and counting the breath, that you have in your mind this image of Buddha Shakyamuni, and you're holding now these 3 things: the breathing, the number, and Buddha Shakyamuni in your mind, and not thinking of anything else. Bringing it back to those 3 things anytime your mind wanders, anytime your mind's sleeping. Bring it back, bring it back. Think about how fortunate we are to be able to visualize such a holy, holy being who's abandoned all negativities and has only excellent qualities, has perfect wisdom, perfect compassion, perfect power, perfect skillful means to help us, perfect loving concern for us. And we can think of this being that we can become. We can become this perfectly enlightened being that is the Buddha, the one who has woken up and has an omniscient mind. This is the Buddha we will become. How amazing it is that we can think of such an incredible being. A being who is enthused by great compassion and taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Now imagine that from this image of Buddha Shakyamuni you have in the front generation, the entire merit field explodes from this image that's been holding all of these holy beings in one. It's said that we can imagine the whole merit field in one sometimes just by looking at the Guru, just by looking at Buddha Shakyamuni, but we now imagine that the whole entire merit field and all of its magnificence becomes aware. We become aware of it, and it's in the space in front of us. We imagine Buddha Shakyamuni is there still, and we imagine His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Imagine Kensur Geshe Wandak, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, Geshe Dorje Damdu, Geshe Aga, all of these holy beings in the space in front of us. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Geshe Sopa, Dema Locha Rinpoche, all these holy beings that we've been so fortunate to come in contact with. Imagine them in the space in front of us. Imagine the extensive deeds lineage beings who are now in the merit field, in the space in front of you. Those masters that received the beautiful instructions from Buddha Shakyamuni that went to Lord Maitreya, to Asanga and Basu Bandhu, and Dignaga and Dharmakirti, and Gunaprabha and Shakyaprabha, all these incredible masters, to Master Salingpa, and so forth. Imagine these holy beings in the space in front of you, and imagine the profound view lineage beings. Imagine those beings who received the holy lineage from Buddha Shakyamuni to Nagarjuna, to Manjushri, to Nagarjuna, to Arya Deva and Chandrakirti and Buddha Palita, and Shanti Deva and Chandrarashita and Bhava Vega. Imagine all these holy beings are in the space in front of you. Imagine the beings of the lineage of blessings, those holy tantric beings who hold the lineage of Vajradhara, Tilopa, Naropa, and Marpa, and Milarepa, and all those holy beings that end up giving us this lineage of blessings through the kindness of Lord Atisha and the kindness of Lama Tsongkhapa and all the holy lineages we find in the Buddhism. So we imagine all these holy beings are there, all the highest Yoga Tantra deities, Yogic Tantra deities, Performance Tantra deities, Action Tantra deities, imagining leaving none out, imagining as many as you can, imagining the entire merit field and the 35 Buddhas and the protector deities. Just imagine that all of these holy beings are in the space in front of you, while remaining in this very, very important posture of clarity, the 7-point Vairakana posture. Imagining these holy beings, Kensur Geshe Wandak smiling, and so remember that smile so well. We know the smile of His Holiness the Dalai Lama so well. His Holiness is so happy, Rinpoche is so happy that we're finally engaging in a practice that will cause us to become the Buddha that they are. This isn't something that's out of our reach. This is something that we will all achieve. And the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas have one goal in mind, and that is to help us become Buddhas. And because now we're here doing that for once, so many lifetimes we waste, so much time in a lifetime we waste, but here we are, and we only have this moment, and at this moment we're doing something that will improve our minds and will make us into the Buddhas we will all be. And imagine that all the gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are so happy and just full of just intense happiness. And they're all smiling, just so proud. Now imagine that you have all sentient beings to this teaching tonight. Any beings who are not Buddhas yet, who still, even if they still have any of the obstructions to omniscience, imagine they're here in order to complete those final stages in order to become Buddhas, and imagine that the lowest realm beings are here and that you've brought them here in order to learn the stages of the path to become Buddhas. So the lowest beings and the highest beings, everyone is here because we all have Buddha nature. We all have a mental consciousness that can be transformed into a state of Buddhahood. So it makes sense to leave no being out. So we imagine that we emanate countless hands and grab all the beings in the hell realms, all the beings in the hungry ghost realms, all the beings in the animal realms, all the beings who are suffering, and all the human bases we can imagine. We grab them and bring them here. All the beings in the demigods and gods realm, we bring them here. And know that if they are not Buddhas, even if they're in the gods realm, they still will suffer again, and they will have to be reborn into a state of suffering. They just don't know it, and they believe through their arrogance that they're liberated. So we imagine that we've brought all of these beings here. And now all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas have an immense amount of bliss. And from this immense amount of bliss, we see that this merit field begins to bubble and brew with light rays and nectars in the color of white, red, and blue. Now we imagine that ourselves and all sentient beings begin to make a 7-limb prayer to all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. Imagine that we all of us united, make physical prostrations. Imagine that we make verbal prostrations. Imagine that all of our minds are paying homage to all of the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. And imagine that we've completed the limb of prostration. Imagine now that we make offerings and imagined and everything that we can possibly think of that is wonderful and beautiful to all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. Imagine that all sentient beings are also thinking and making all of these offerings. And imagine that these things are owned and unowned, all these wonderful things that can possibly be offered, including our own beings, we imagine. And imagine that ourselves and all sentient beings have completed the limb of offering. Now we imagine all of the misdeeds that we've accumulated since beginningless time in all of our lives, leaving none out. And all sentient beings are imagining all these misdeeds that we've done in this life and all of our lives, leaving out none, and acknowledging them to the merit field, and now acknowledging that we've done these things, and trying to stamp in our mind that these things we're acknowledging as misdeeds are things we don't want to do. So our mind is reminded in the future that these non-virtues are things we want to abstain from. So we acknowledge these things that we've done, not for anyone else, but for ourselves, to make an acknowledgement that this isn't something that we want to do. We imagine that ourselves and all sentient beings have completed the limb of confession. Now we think about all the good that we've done, all the good that holy beings have done. We really, really think and leave no good out. And we rejoice in that good. Lama Tsongkhapa says the easiest way to create virtuous is to rejoice, because it's something we can just sit back and do and think about all of the excellent qualities and all of the virtues that Khenso Geshe Wandak engaged in and continues to engage in through the work of the Dharmakaya, and all of the excellent qualities and virtues that His Holiness the Dalai Lama engages in and will engage in, etc., etc. So we rejoice in that, and we rejoice in the good that we have done in the prior, in everything that we've done. We rejoice in this. Then we imagine that ourselves and all sentient beings complete this limb of rejoicing and have stamped in our minds now that what we want to do is good. We've told our minds what we acknowledged our misdeeds by saying we wish we didn't do this, and now we rejoice and say we want to do more of the virtue that we've previously did and do the virtue like those holy beings. So we stamp our minds with this rejoicing and imagine that all sentient beings around us here have done that. Now we go to the next. We request all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, please turn the wheel of Dharma. Please, please, please teach. Because the Buddhas don't wash away the sins with water. They don't take away our suffering with their hands. They don't give us their realizations. There's no special magic. They teach us the truth of suchness, and then we liberate ourselves through learning that. So we have to have understood this, and we have to have understood this by the wisdom arisen from hearing, and the only way we can hear these teachings is if the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas continue to teach. So we request, and we imagine that all sentient beings are requesting that all of these incredible beings continue to turn the wheel of the Dharma, continue to teach the Dharma, to be able to empty the world of suffering, to be able to truly, truly show sentient beings why it is that they suffer, and not blame it on something that isn't real, showing them exactly why they suffer and exactly what has to be done in order to remove that suffering and achieve the state of fearlessness and then eventually bliss if one wants to be a Buddha. So we have to hear the Dharma and understand it in very, very slow fashion so that it matures our mind and saturates it. So we ask these teachers to continue to teach. And we beg them to stay in this world. So now we've imagined that the fifth limb of requesting is completed, and that we and all sentient beings have requested all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to teach. And now the sixth limb, entreating. We beg the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas not to just go to an abiding nirvana. Don't leave us. Continue to emanate, continue to teach us, continue from your love and compassion that was generated on the Bodhisattva path. Please, please, please continue to teach. And stay. In order for us to hear it, you need to be in this world, not in an abiding nirvana. So please, please, please stay. So we entreat these beings to stay. Not first it was to teach in the fifth limb. The sixth limb is to beg them to stay. Please stay and teach us. And then we make a seven, and we imagine that all of the sentient beings and ourselves have now completed the sixth limb of entreating, and now we dedicate this virtue that we've created to our becoming Buddhas, and we imagine that all the beings are in unison with us, dedicating this virtue to becoming Buddhas. And now we make further supplications that may this be a successful teaching. May we, through the force of the virtue that we've engaged in, through our good motivations, through our kindness, through our love, through our compassion, may we be able to hear this teaching properly, through the force of those truths of rejoicing and confessing and so forth. Through the force of this and through the force of my good motivation, may I be able to understand this teaching, hear it well, so I can then analyze it and then realize it through meditation. So we make those final kind of supplications for blessing. And normally we would put a mandala offering there, or have done it in the offering section, but we'll do that in the request for teaching part. So now, imagining that all the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas are so happy now. All sentient beings have made a seven-limb offering and have engaged in the same things that all the Gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas engaged in on their path to the resultant state of Buddhahood, to the resultant state of the Dharmakaya and the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya, and those potentials have emerged because of those beings also made seven-limb prayers to their teachers and to the high beings in order to pay a supplication to their future state of enlightenment. So we stamp this in our minds, not because we're bowing down to something we can't become. It's because we're so encouraged and we're so reverent because we know this is true, and it will be who we become. And the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are so kind to us to show us exactly what they've done, and the Buddhas in particular, what they've done to abandon all negativities, to have the excellent qualities of body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. So with this in mind, imagine that the merit field is just so full of bliss and happiness. Imagine that you and all sentient beings have a white Om at your crown, a red Ah at your throat, and a blue Hum at your heart. Symbolizing the white Om, your body, the red Ah, your speech, and the blue Hum, your mind. Anybody who's following this on some of the applications, if this sounds complicated, just go along for the ride. Bear with me. Now imagine that the merit field, all the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas in the space in front of you now are so full of bliss, and from this bliss, white light rays are showering down on us and transforming into white ohms that dissolve into our crowns and all sentient beings' crowns and transform our body into pure bodies. Imagine now from the bliss that the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas are experiencing because they're so happy we're all here doing something to become Buddhas. That's all they care about. They love us so much. Imagine that this bliss is creating red light rays and nectars that turn into a shower of red ahs that dissolve into our throats and all sentient beings' throats and transform our impure speech into pure speech. Now imagine the same. From this bliss that the merit fields experience, blue light rays and nectars begin to shower down on us. They say sometimes like it's a blizzard. Imagine a blizzard of these light rays and nectars that are blue transforming into blue hums and then dissolving into our hearts and all sentient beings' hearts where we have these hums and it transforms our impure mind and all sentient beings' impure mind into the pure mind of the Buddha, the Vajra mind of the Buddha. So let's sit with that for a moment, imagining that our body, speech, and mind has been transformed through this process. We can imagine that white, red, and blue light rays and nectars are transforming into Om, Ah, Hom, right, white, red, and blue, respectively. So let's sit with that for a moment, imagining that we're transforming into purity, and then we will begin with the Heart Sutra. Knowing that we all have Buddha nature, we all have this clear light mind, the mind that is in the same nature as the Buddha's mind right now, in terms of ultimate reality. I'm going to recite the Heart Sutra in Tibetan. When we think of the Heart Sutra, it's the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, and implicitly this teaches all of the pathways that are necessary to get to Buddhahood. And explicitly, the teaching is on the nature of reality. It's the Buddha's teaching on the final truth, the final ultimate truth, the lack of true establishment of phenomena completely. The Buddha said it was a grasping at the self of person and phenomena as having some sort of inherent existence, which is the key to all our problems. And the Buddha showed us what the true nature of all phenomena is in this sutra, whilst implicitly teaching all of the pathways which are necessary to get to Buddhahood. So just listen to this in Tibetan. It's a nice blessing. Kind of breaks things up a little bit too, and we'll start with the Heart Sutra. I'll do the best I can. I'm a little rusty, but I'll do the best I can. Papa Shereji Barodi Shimi Nimbo Shuzo Jakagido Bhagavate Brajaparamita Randeya Bugedo Jamdende Ma Shereji Barodi Shimi Nimbo Bumbo Chigo Digidagi Duba Dujina Jamdende Jabi Jago Bumbi Rige Longi Gendun Jambodan Janju Zembi Gendun Jambodan Taji Du Shute Tize Jamdende Zamo Nawanji Jabu Juji Nandandi Dingin Zila Nyoba Shuzo Yandi Ize Janju Zemba Zemba Jambo Baba Janrezi Wanju Shereji Barodi Shimba Zamo Jubanila Nambada Jimbumonga Bodita Laya Ranji Doma Nabodao, then they Sanji Duzilan Damba Sharibu, Janju Zamba Zamba Jambo Baba Janrizi Wang. Shula de Gijimezo, Rijibongala la Jereji Baro de Jimba Zamo Juba Jiba Duba de Dida Laba Jadi Gijime Badan, Jaju Zamba Zamba Jambo Baba Janrizi One, Shugitsi Dandamba Jarada di Ibula de Gijimezo Jarebo, Rijibon Mongala la Jereji Baro de Jimba Zamo Juba Jiba Duba de Dida Nabada Bajade, Pomonga Bodida Jan, Ranjinji Doma Naba Yandaba, Jesu Dao Zu, Dombao, Domini Zu, Zule Doma.
domani jemayeno domani le janzu jemayeno dejen duzo wadon duje dan namba sheba nandon bao jaribu de tachu tamje domani de zeni meba maje pa magaba jema meba jema janja wa jawa meba gawa meba u Sharibu Didawena Domani Lazu me Zoro me Duje me Nava Jeva me Mime Name Jeme Lume Ime Zume Drame Drime Rome Reja me Jume Do Migi Game Bene Iji Game Iji Naba Jebi Bada Yame Do Mariba Zeba me Bene Gashi me Gashi Zebi Bada Yame Do Dejen Dudu Yawadan Gojo Wadan Gobo Dan Lame Yejime Doba me Ma Doba Yame Do Sharibu Didawena Janju Zemba Nando Mame Jeraji Baro the Jimbala Denji Nede, Senlaji Bamejin Jaba Medu Jinjila Legentula Dene Yanin Lady Bidajindu, Duzondu Nubajabe Janti, Sanjay Danche Jang, Sheraji Baro the Jimbala Dene Lana Meba Yandaba Zobi Janju Ngubo Zoba Sanje Zoa, Detowena Sheraji Baro the Jiminga, Jipa Jiminga, Lana Mebenga, Menyaba Danyambenga, Tunyo Jabja Rabji Jewa Jibinga, Menzumbe Nadamba. Bajade Jeraji Bara de Jimbinga, me bateata on gate gate barazangati Bodhizwa, Sharibu Janju Zemba Jumbo, Deta Jeraji Bara de Jimba, Samalala Baja, Odene Jum de Dingenzi de Legende, Janju Zemba Jumbo, Baba Genrezi, Wanjula Lezo, Jeja Wejine Lezo, Rigi Bonde Dajano, Rigi Bonde Dajane, Dudadi Dudi Demba Jindu, Jeraji Bara de Jimba, Samolaja. Baja de Dejan Jeba Nanjan Jazu Yerong or Jom den de Dide Getsi Gatsine Sedan Demba Shara Dadi Budan Janju Zemba Jembo Baba Genrezi Wanshudan Damche Dan Dembi Dibi Gode Dada Lada Midan Lama Yidan Jeza Jibi Jiten Yeran de Jom den de Jizumbala Nyomba Do Ngala jube ne jo damba ne nguje du ju nga yi du do jen dru ba bo lama yi bu shinzi ne zong gandro zo la sha zi lo aga samara de jandara samara ya be aga samara de aga samara de Aga samara jashandara samara be teata on gate paragate parasangate buddhizo papa gonju sanji gaye dembe doji she loba doji meba doji shiva doji jagi baji medu be she danji she denkari so again to jaje she shiva da medu ne be jandan wa da dum ba ju jin ju bon zon jo je ji tashi de jan den da de le jo. I'll make a mandala offering of a perfect pure universe to request the teaching to be given. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas High, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious teacher, precious Guru. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. The one who is transformed into the reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher Sugata and the protector, to you I make prostrations. Now say the parting from the four attachments. If you are attached to this life, you are not a spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you do not have renunciation.
If you are attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all sentient beings. Okay, so wonderful that we're all able to be here again. The fact that we're here and listening to this teachings means that we haven't died. So we have the opportunity right now to mature our minds into the state of a perfect being. We have this opportunity because we have this human basis. But it doesn't just happen magically, unfortunately. It's not something that will just occur without effort. It's not something that will just occur by only having a part of the path. It will be necessary to have all of the components of the path realized within our minds if we want to even achieve the lowest level of liberation, the fearlessness, which is freedom from cyclic existence. If we want to achieve that state, an abiding nirvana, it'll be necessary for us to really investigate this, understand this well, and be able to practice day and night to be able to get our minds wise enough, intelligent enough through the wisdom arisen from hearing and then analysis, and then our minds calm enough through doing fixed meditation to be able to then unite our calm abiding, which we get from practicing fixed meditation eventually through the 9 stages, which will allow us to reach calm abiding. That calm abiding, when sitting there, ready for a wisdom that gives rise to appliancy, to unite to it, then you have something very potent that can allow you to get to the last final state of conceptuality in terms of right before you see emptiness, where you don't even realize there's conceptuality left, even though there's a little sign there still. You're at the peak of existence. The last mundane state, it's called, in the path of preparation. And you don't even realize that object. The subject, the meditative discriminator, right? The wisdom, discriminating wisdom, right? The consciousness is the wisdom meditating on emptiness, which is the object. The subject, which is the wisdom, consciousness, and the object, which is the emptiness, becomes so fused that there's not even, the meditator's not even able to see that there's still a sign of conceptuality left. And then eventually that meditator could see the nature of reality directly. But it's so important that you have these 2 qualities to your practice. One, a very sharp wisdom, and then a very calm mind. Because we know so many times you hear this example, if you walked into a dark room and you wanted to read a book, and it was really important that you were able to see all of the words, maybe the words were quite small, and someone brought a candle in. Just the illumination is, no matter how bright it was, wouldn't be enough. It would allow it to illuminate, but if there was a little wind in the room, that candle starts moving around, and then the words start jumping around. Likewise, your mind, when doing analytical meditation, can only get so far because it's still doing this moving around, and it's not able to hold on to that object of the lack of objective existence of reality tightly. It knows it, and it can get to this point where it knows it so well. But to really realize it so that it jumps you next into non-conceptual, it requires an intense amount of conceptuality. And we find that in Chandrakirti's entrance to the middle way, where the yogis don't dwell in discursive thought, but they get there through inference, basically, is what it says. And we have to abandon this misconception that engaging in analytical meditation isn't necessary. So that's what I want to talk about tonight. Previously I mentioned this appendix It's in the second volume of Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, translated by the Mahayana Sutra and Tantra Press. Art Engel and folks translated the second volume, but they put some really cool appendix in the back. And Pabongka Rinpoche wrote this letter at the request of a monastery in Kham when he was super busy. They make sure that they write that. He was really busy at the time. And he kind of bangs out this letter in modern day terms, based on how they, set the stage. And it's just so incredible and shows you so clearly how to meditate on these topics. And I thought that we'd look a little bit at this stuff tonight. So it's called How to Meditate on the Stages of the Path to Enlightenment. Really catchy title. Got very creative. But then in parentheses, it's very creative. It says, a teaching with special emphasis on the methods of an experiential instruction, expressed only and in plain words, as if pointing with a finger to each element of practice. So now it's saying, so he's just writing this real quick thing, but it's going to point out like a finger to each element of the practice. And when I saw this for the first time, I have to say, it reshaped the way I looked at meditation and the way I was meditating and the way I read the whole Lam Rim Chemo. It really, really did. It had that much of an impact on my mind, and we're not going to read it. I'll encourage you to. I maybe could Xerox parts. No, I can. Art Engel gave me permission. He said, anything I've ever done, give it away for free to anyone who wants to learn. When I asked him if we could use one of his books that he translated. And I don't know him personally. I've never met him in my life. But I sent one email asking, and that was the response I got. So that's that's someone who understands the Dharma. Use anything I'm saying, right? This is such a wonderful, wonderful work. I will read only... Okay, here. I'll read a bit of it. So it says, instruction on the importance of analytic meditation and on the key elements of how to practice it. So sometimes we hear, just watch your mind. All you need to do is that. Empty your mind of thought. It's the conceptual thoughts that are your maniac inside. But it's also the conceptual thoughts which will undo the right conceptual thoughts, which will undo your wrong conceptual thoughts, as much as conceptual thought possibly can, if that makes sense. We had I'm going to say this until I'm, as many times as I have to, we had an ignorance related to the alphabet that didn't magically come to us. It had to be removed through learning, through hearing about it, and then thinking, okay, it goes like this. Oh, we need to learn it because of this, doing some kind of contemplation about it. And then it's sunk in, and now it's just common. You just know it, right? So you have a lot of things you don't know that you just don't know. And the only way you can know the things you don't know is to learn them. It's absurd to think that a state of ignorance could be turned around somehow without wisdom and without knowing something in its place. And when we look at all the inferential valid cognitions that will happen, all the inferences that will happen along the path as you get more and more subtle, there's more and more subtle signs of the lack of true establishment. As you remove the conceptual appearances more and more and more, as you use single-pointed concentration, as you use calm abiding to unite with your analysis, as you do that more and more and more, you get to the point where you see different signs to prove emptiness at a subtler level. So you're inferring new things. It's a valid cognition. It's a sardu malu ripa. It's a brand new cognition that you're having, but it's in relation to your inference. Your previous inference is supporting your new inference. It's just gone to a deeper level because you've now seen more deeper signs through a deeper inference. So you can never stop doing that. So I pray that my mind, and this is where it starts, I pray that my mind and those of all lineage disciples become steeped in Dharma through the power and blessings of the Father Lama, Losang, Tuwang, Dorje Chang, and those of his lineage and spiritual sons. So this is referring to Lama Tsongkhapa, and Gyaltsab and Kirtupje. And the lineage all the way down to Khenser Geshe Wandak, and now you have me, Jeff Allen, talking away because Khenser Geshe Wandak asked me to continue the lineage. So here I am. Sorry, I don't look a little more exotic, but abandon ordinary appearances, because that's what gets all of us in trouble. All these labels of what we think something has to look like is just our inability to look at what's really going on sometimes, because we engage collectively and then we eliminate things that we don't really fill within our perspective and biases, and then we believe that's how they are. So careful. So anyway, pray. Having found a form that is valuable and hard to find, this human basis, and having perceived the 8 worldly dharmas as diversion for fools, worldly concerns as diversion for fools, those friends who strive single-mindedly in their pursuit of an ultimate goal are marvelous indeed. We want to become Buddha. Maybe we become Buddhas for the sake of all sentient beings. You are marvelous. If you're even thinking, maybe, may I have this happen. When we are proud of our wide learning, our efforts at teaching and studying, and we are even sure that we could explain 100 scriptures, though our minds have not improved the least bit spiritually, we've amassed information. Have we really, really allowed it to saturate our mind? We know some stuff. It's because we lack the analytic meditation that combines understanding with experience into it. We think of experience as something like, what we're doing physically, but we're experiencing these teachings by analyzing them. That's how we experience them. We saturate our mind, we experience them by analyzing them. So now let's look at what that looks like. A mere semblance of listening, study, and understanding can generate both faith and listening wisdom, the wisdom arisen from hearing. So you can generate that just by hearing some stuff. And the topics of leisure and fortune. So you can hear that you have this human basis that's so precious. You'll hear it. You can hear it. You have this wisdom arise from hearing. And you can even think, wow, that sounds true. About impermanence, aversion, and so on, hatred, all these teachings, you hear the negativities of them. But they have not arisen through analytical meditation. You just heard it. Such wisdom is nothing more than right judgment, and so evidently and eventually it fades away. So that's called a correctly assuming consciousness when we look at low rig. And correctly assuming consciousness can change. It's not a cognition of something completely. It can fall right back into doubt, right back into wrong view. All it will take is for someone to confuse you and tell you something that sounds smarter. We see this happening when you read the end of the Lam Rim Chemo, right? Which one of the view is Lama Tsongkhapa opposing? Which is the right view? Which is the correct view? Oh, no, that's the right view. Oh, whoops. It's because you don't have inferential valid cognition. You don't have a view. You may assume the correct view, but probably not even that. You probably don't even have that. But if you do assume the correct view, say the view that you assume is the middle way consequence view, the highest view of emptiness. Say you correctly assume it. You're assuming something that's right. That can change for you, even though it stays right, but you go wrong. You go to doubt tending towards, maybe it's true, to, I'm not sure, to, I don't think it's true, to wrong view. If you haven't analyzed this properly, you only have correctly assuming consciousness. Just praying, just memorizing, just reciting, this is all that's occurring if you haven't analyzed these more deeply. So let's look at what analytical meditation is. Is it what you think it is? According to Pabongka. We're not going to get into like really, really deep stuff because he said we're talking in plain language tonight. So we're talking in plain language about practice. So it's saying like, the stuff you hear, you think it's true, it sounds so good, it even gives you goosebumps, makes you move your mind like, this Lama is so profound, His Holiness, I saw him, and I just knew it was all right. And everything he said was just right on. And then it quickly fades away. How many times have I seen this over 27 years at Buddhist centers? very excited, very into it. I saw someone go all the way to India and like get to India and not have enough analysis into this and see some things happening in monasteries that didn't look like a Pure Land and never studied Buddhism again that I know of. Maybe they do now. Who knows? I don't think so. I kind of know them still. I don't think they do. So it's interesting. What is that? That's correctly assuming consciousness. Dropped a whole life, got a ticket to India, but didn't have inferential valid cognition. Do you? Do I? Will I tomorrow morning hear something that sounds really, really good and go off on another tangent? Because we have this thing in our mind that's called the artificial conception of true existence. Artificial things that are in our mind that are wrong. Where do they come from? Well, it's from wrong people telling us wrong things that we've kind of decided were true and that, have been reinforced by inappropriate thinking on our behalf and have been told to us, so there's a creator God. Oh, things are arisen from self, from other, from a combination of both, or they're not caused at all. It's all nothing, So we've been told these things. We have these imprints in our mind. We have these artificial conceptions. We have these thoughts that occur, these things that we've been told, these things that run around. We have to undo. And if they're artificial, it means that they weren't, they're not just there. They could just go away with some other kind of thinking. So we have to get some other kind of thinking to get rid of those things that have been told to us that are wrong, that we hold on to as so true. And we still hold on to them. I still hold on to, I can still get that guilt, right? And think there's some Buddha out there judging me whenever I make a mistake. I think there's some creator Buddha. Because I was so young and it was drilled into me that there was some judgmental thing out there that's judging you because they made you wrong. Right? And I still can fall into that trap where I don't just purify it and recognize, yes, you have ignorance, and try and get rid of the ignorance instead of grasping at myself as being something that I'm not, and how could I think I couldn't have made a mistake? Think you're perfect now all of a sudden? And it's wrong ideas and wrong views I have to untangle, and the only way I untangle them is through analysis. You fail, you run a risk. Oh, so here's the risk. What's going to happen? What happened to my friend? What happens to me if I don't get inferential valid cognition at least about this stuff? You run a risk by failing to generate soon after this wisdom. So here it shows you why people stop. You run a risk by failing to generate soon after this wisdom, the wisdom arisen from hearing. If you don't start to work with this material, it just goes to doubt. The genuine experience that comes from, it says, you run a risk by failing to generate soon after this wisdom, the genuine experience that comes from reflection, from analysis. Many persons become insensitive to the Dharma. Sometimes it's called hardened by the Dharma, when they allow the former awareness to fade away before they can generate the latter. Amassing loads and loads, you've seen it, I've seen it. These scholars that literally, I've never seen so many divisions a person could know. All the tenet systems, so clear inside and out. But just by conventional appearances, we're all talking right now, right? Don't seem like such great people. Now, we can't, ordinary appearances we got to be careful with. But, when they tell me, I have to rely on the two witnesses, myself and what others think of me. We'll leave it at that. I've seen this. I've had this happen where you have all this intellectual understanding and you don't taste it at all. It just becomes this thing where you're smarter than everybody else. And everybody else is so wrong and dumb. And oh my gosh, then even like, your family members, you can start to feel like that about. And all it is a hardening of the Dharma, because you'd never feel higher than others if you realize mind training. Because you're supposed to think of yourself as the lowest amongst all and hold others to be supreme from the very depths of your heart. Your heart's hardened by the Dharma. You'll never have that open heart. You have to let these teachings change you. That's what the purpose of these teachings are. When we look at what was the gift Atisha gave us? He showed us that there's no contradiction in the teachings. They're all instructions to practice. How do you practice them? by engaging in the wisdom that you hear them, and then you know what it is that you have to learn about. You analyze them, and then you engage in meditation. You directly realize them. You apply what you've realized to be true. You apply it. And why would you keep applying it if you weren't sure about it? Think about it. Let's not even talk low rig. You're kind of sure. I know, but you don't really know. To, I definitely know beyond a shadow of a doubt. I'll never change my mind about that one thing because that's definitely true. To, I know it's true. I experienced it. Yeah, no, I experienced that directly. Just like I see this cup I know is in front of me. I saw with my mind that topic. And it says when it happens, it says that you have something that pierces you physically and mentally as if you had just heard your closest loved one passed away suddenly. That's the impact that suddenly happens when you have a realization in your mind of this, it says. Once you are overcome by insensitivity to the Dharma, your mind stream becomes ruined and you're incapable of being tamed. I'm smarter than everyone. No one knows anything. I know so many things. You don't know any things. And these things you haven't applied. You haven't seen them as instructions for practice because Lord Atisha showed us that's the conqueror's intent. So don't abandon the Dharma. This is supposed to be practiced. This is supposed to be seen as all things, as instructions for an individual to practice. When you're saying that you're stupid for practicing like that without just trying to love the person and have compassion for the person, your heart's hardened by the Dharma. If you're doing that out of love and compassion and clarification, totally different story. Doesn't seem like it when I've seen it at times. And then I've seen it done by kind lamas like Khenser Geshe Wandak to an arrogant boy like me. And I knew it was complete love. So I couldn't remain upset for very long. Very, very different. Even by the Lam Rim or the blessed words of your guru, your mind can be ruined. So apply yourself to the profound method for avoiding insensitivity to the Dharma. What's the profound method? Engage in analysis. Okay, and that's achieved through the blessings of your guru's speech, together with your own efforts to listen to the Dharma properly, but it's vital. So your own efforts to listen to the Dharma properly. Everyone's so bored of the three pots. Get real close to understanding what you need to abandon in order to have the wisdom arisen from hearing. We need to abandon the faults of those three pots if we want to have the wisdom arisen from hearing that's proper. We have to properly hear something if we have something proper to analyze. Because it's not wisdom if it's incorrect. It's not a correctly assuming consciousness if it's incorrect. So we have to have something to analyze that's correct, and the only way we can hear it correctly is to have our ears open right. And then it says, it'll be followed soon after with developing the understanding gained through reflection, so through analysis. How then do you generate the understanding that comes from reflection? Analytical meditation is the exercise of eliciting experiential realizations. You're experiencing the topics by contemplating a particular meditation topic from every standpoint and in every way using scriptural citations and sharp reasoning. So you are taking individual topics when we're doing analytical meditation. Glancing meditation, or running meditation, or jogging meditation, whatever you want to call it, is a little different. It's called something else in here. Reflective, it's called here. But a glancing meditation is merely going through an outline and making sure you're going through the outline. Very, very good for your mind to familiar with these stages. But you have to analyze each and every one of these topics and gain the wisdom arisen from analysis in relation to them. And then once you have the wisdom arisen through analysis, then you can merely glance meditation the topic. So if you're doing a glancing meditation, we'll get to it more in this text, for instance, a glancing meditation, just going through, for instance, what we do sometimes at the beginning of the meditation sessions, when we do the setting our motivation. We go through the glancing meditation, we look at the Four Noble Truths, and we establish this desire to emerge from cyclic existence. We establish it in terms of the teaching shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity, and we get this kind of mind that is generated that wants to emerge from cyclic existence. And then we meditate on the stages to generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment by combining the 7-point cause and effect with the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice. So this shows us in a glancing way then how we would, from this desire to definitely emerge from cyclic existence in the practice of the 3 highest higher trainings, become a bodhisattva and engage in the stages of the path, the entrance to the Mahayana, which will allow us to become a Buddha. So we do those practices and then we arrive at this state, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, as we run through this glancing meditation where we've gone through the Four Noble Truths. We've desired to emerge from cyclic existence through meditating on the teachings shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity and recognizing we want to emerge from all 6 realms of cyclic existence. And then from that desire to emerge, from that renunciation, as Nankapel says in the Mind Training Like the Rays of the Sun, we then shift towards others and we begin to generate a desire to help all of them. So in a glancing meditation, we're looking at, if we're going through it in terms of combining those 2 practices, we're generating this even-mindedness, this equanimity in relation to our friends, neutrals, and enemies by recognizing that since beginningless time, we've had all these varying relationships with them. So we're just going through these glancing stages. Since various time, I've had these relationships with them. I would equally be willing to benefit them. And all sentient beings have been my mother. Since beginningless time, every single sentient being has been so kind to me and taken care of me in my most vulnerable state. First you have to be equally willing to have an open mind about every single sentient being to be able to then posit them as someone who's been so kind and dear to you in your previous life. And then you remember how kind and dear beings are to you and have been to you, and you leave no being out and see that your friends, your neutrals, and your enemies have all had this relationship with you, that they've been so kind and taking care of you when you were most vulnerable, and you've thought about all of the ways they've done taking care of you in kind ways that they've taken care of you. And you're just glancing through this, and you wish you could repay their kindness. And you think of the best way to make them happy would be the way that you wanted to be happy, by recognizing within the first noble truth that even the happiness in cyclic existence is suffering. It's the suffering of change. So you leave it right there for a moment and you say, I want them to be liberated. That's the kind of happiness I wish they could have. I wish I could repay their kindness with that kind of uncontaminated happiness, and we leave it there. And then we think all sentient beings are as equally as important as I am. We're glancing through this, and we're seeing that all sentient beings want happiness and the causes of happiness, and want to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, just like I do. And we recognize that I'm no more important than they are in their wish to have happiness. They feel happiness, it feels good. They feel pain, it feels bad. I feel happiness, I feel pain. It has a similar effect on me. So all sentient beings deserve to have happiness. I'm not more important than someone else in that I should be happier than you. So I get to this place where I see everyone's equally important. Everyone has Buddha nature. I can't even find myself in terms of designation without you. So we see that everyone is equally important in terms of myself and others. And we recognize that cherishing ourselves has so many downfalls, and cherishing others has so many excellent qualities. And we wish that we could take on the suffering of others and give all others all of our happiness. We're glancing through this meditation, trying to learn what it would take once we have an inferential valid cognition of each of these steps to become bodhisattvas, trying to learn to ripen our minds more and more and more, so that as we realize these steps, it's just a natural thought process for us to get to, so that we actually generate this mind that we're trying to generate, which is called bodhicitta. So we take on the suffering and we give them a happiness, and then we actually then land on this moment where we say, I will put all beings' needs before my own, because this is the way to my bliss and complete fearlessness. This is the way I can be the happiest. I've seen at times in my life where I felt the most amount of love. That was when I was the most happiness. And love is wanting someone else to have happiness and the causes of happiness. And as I generate this more and more and more, I will have a state of bliss that's equal to the bliss I could experience in relation to one being multiplied times an infinite number of beings. And that's the number of blisses and bliss my mind could experience if I could put others' needs before my own. And I recognize that that is the only sensible thing to do. And I put it in my mind, others' needs go before my own. Then from that space, I glance onto that all beings have been so kind to me. They've been so kind to me in so many ways. All the things that I enjoy in my life, all this cup that I have in my hand, and the coffee that was, grown in some place, fair trade. Then there was someone kind enough to think, should it be fair trade or not fair trade? And then it was brought to a port, and these people unloaded it off boats, and you get the point. There's so many beings that were involved just in this cup of coffee in my cup. And there's milk in it. Unfortunately, it's not vegan. It's not dairy-free. I'm just being honest, right? So there's milk in this cup. So there was a mother of a cow, and a cow that was so kind, right? And someone who then somehow got this milk out of the cow, and then it somehow got bottled somewhere. I don't even know. I can't even, my little mind can't even imagine how this cup of coffee got to me and how many beings I depended on in order to get this cup of coffee. And then I look around my house and see all the things that I enjoy, and I see all sentient beings being kind to me. I see all of their kindness, and I see that they got up early in the morning and did things they didn't want to do in order for me to have all of these things. And it's in dependence upon other beings that I have this happiness, and it's in dependence upon other beings that I will achieve bliss. Because we know that the most happy, my neighbor, who's a pretty rough guy, doesn't talk real emotionally, the most happiness he ever felt, and it was a month or I don't even know, I'm bad with chronology, a month or two ago, I get a phone call after his baby daughter's born. Dude, I've never experienced so much happiness. I've never had so much love than I had at looking at my daughter after she was born. And this isn't someone who talks like this. And I've heard this so many times. And you think about it, it's true. And when you loved someone and you've had that real first moment of that intense love, how intense that is and how happy and exhilarating that is. And we can transform our minds into that only because we would see everyone with that same concept. And as we round through the Lam Rim more and more and more, and as we develop a relationship with a guru and with a lama, and we become very, very close with that being, we feel a love that I have not had any children, but I can't imagine. I thought that I had loved before without any kind of strings or anything, unconditionally. But when after decades of being with Khenser Geshe Wandak and really, becoming, reliant on him spiritually, I realized at the end of his life, as I was taking care of him, that I would have done anything for him joyfully, with a smile. And in the most intense moments, I still would look in his eyes and just get this intense love, this happiness that occurred. And when I can see every sentient being, someone taught me the alphabet in order for me to understand Khenser Geshe Wandak. And since beginningless time, all sentient beings have been my teacher in some form or another. And if I can really, really start to understand the value of a teacher, and in this case, of course, a spiritual teacher, my root guru, and understand what that love is, we can also say all sentient beings are my mother, all sentient beings are my teacher. And the intensity of the understanding of love just compounds more and more and more. So we know then at this point in the stages of our glancing meditation that switch just makes sense, and those beings are so kind. And then we say to ourselves, because we have this mind of love and compassion erupting within us in this glancing meditation, it would erupt within us if we had inferential valid cognition of each of these stages. Now it starts to feel stronger and stronger as we glance meditation more and more and more, because your mind is becoming more familiar in a little cheating way each time you do it, with a little inference into each topic. But it's just not enough. You've got to really, really realize each topic, but you're getting further by doing glancing meditation. So it makes sense, I think. So then, You say from this love and compassion that you would have inferred if you had inferred it, but you're glancing it, you say, I will be the cause of beings having happiness, and the cause of happiness. I will be the cause of beings being free from suffering, the cause of suffering. And then we, through our total analysis and understanding of all the stages of glancing that we've done, we see that we're not equipped to do that, and that only the Buddha is. And we say, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. That's glancing meditation. But then we would then go back to whatever topic we need to realize, and we'd get good at it and stay on it until we realize it. So let's move on a little bit into reading a little bit more of this. And then it says, for instance, if you set as the object to be established that your guru is Buddha. So for instance, he uses the first topic of the Lam Rim is relying on a spiritual teacher. Of course, we need a teacher to learn from. So this is a little more advanced than that point, because it's relating to spirituality, relating to all of our lifetimes. So we have to establish that a teacher is the most important thing for us to have for all of our lifetimes. So we come to terms with that. And it says, advance again and again those cogent arguments that will prove he or she is a Buddha. So this is an advanced, of course, Pabongka is always talking about the integrated path. We've talked about levels of teacher. Teacher who's like a professor, fine, like me. Teacher who's like a perfection vehicle guru who you could put in your merit field. And then, after, investigating a teacher and seeing that they're suitable teacher, you would do that. But you could take a lecture from really anyone and then establish whether, they're credible or not based on, criteria in their background, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You could research a teacher and think that they're great and then go hear them talk and they just don't even know what they're talking about. You didn't do anything wrong. You did as much research as you could. But it's about finding a qualified teacher and what that would mean to all of your future lives. Think about finding all the wrong teachers have given us artificial conceptions of true existence. That's what the gifts that when we separate Buddhist and non-Buddhist, the Buddhist teachings don't harm. Non-Buddhists harm somewhere in there. Not to say that there aren't good things within them, but they harm because they cause cyclic existence over and over and over again. And the Buddhist teachings fall within the four seals of all compounded phenomena are impermanent, all contaminated things are in the nature of suffering, all phenomena are in the nature of selflessness and emptiness, and nirvana is peace. There's no harm to a sentient being found within those kind of cordoned off sections that we say this is Buddhism. But anything that falls outside of that harms beings in some way, even if it's subtly. So we establish that we need a teacher who can teach us a flawless path, and then we can establish that other higher things. For this is the means of eliciting the conviction that they are Buddha. Is through using cogent arguments. It's not through, somebody said Santa Claus is real. Okay. Somebody said the guru's like the Buddha. Okay, the guru's like the Buddha. No. This is through analysis. And it says that, indeed, the primary aim for all meditation objects, such as leisure and fortune, the life of impermanence, renunciation, bodhicitta, correct view, is to elicit sure understandings of them by engaging in sharp analytical meditation. It says, so you first have to be careful and to study the points. And it says to merely review a series of topics in your mind is reflective, is glance meditation. It's not analytical meditation. That stuff we're doing that it sounds so boring, that's not even analytical meditation. That's just glancing meditation. This is not what we call cultivating analytic meditation. Neither is it analytical meditation to memorize words of a teaching and then rehearse their meaning in your mind. To memorize the essence of every one of the path stages, as well as their order and number, and so on, and then to recall each essence, order, and number individually, is also just reflective glance, not analytical meditation. Therefore, as I said earlier, Pabongka is great. He's really one of the first lamas that changed my life, that really made me see that, getting out of cyclic existence made sense. Therefore, as I stated earlier, analytical meditation consists of setting forth a single topic as the object to be established, and then repeatedly analyzing it with scripture and profound reasoning as the means of generating a sure understanding. Inferential cognition, something that you have a correct sign. You've proven it through a syllogism. Like, the subject of guru is the Buddha because of blank. You have a reason that you've established, and you've done it enough that you come to this inferential valid cognition. It's no longer just a correctly assuming consciousness. And it says, for instance, when we reflect, and it shows you we do this already, Pabongka says. It says, for instance, and it's like, oh, okay, he's going to give us some, for instances about some high meditations we do. When we reflect again and again on the reasons why we think a particular object is attractive, oh, we do this? We develop strong desire. This is analytical meditation towards an object of attachment, and it increases our active desire. So we already know how to do this. Oh, that car is the one I want. Oh, it's so beautiful. Why is it so beautiful? Oh, it's so beautiful because it goes faster than other cars, and it's a status symbol. So that really, and there all this inappropriate mental conduct's going on, inflaming the object. It has this and it has that. This is analytical meditation, and then we come to some sort of conclusion, be it wrong, and then it saturates our mind so much that we just gotta have that thing because we believe it has these qualities that we've analyzed it to have so much. This is a false way. So it says, likewise, when we recall again and again how terrible an enemy is, how they harmed us, our hatred greatly increases. This represents analysis towards an object of hatred, and it ignites our experiential awareness of hatred. Our experience of hatred is ignited. Just like our experience of love and compassion can be united, our experience of hatred is united. And it says, now let's shift to the spiritual domain, where the aim is to increase an experiential awareness of different virtuous minds by repeatedly contemplating the various reasons that will elicit them, as I just described with desire and hatred. What you must do here is contemplate over and over the most penetrating of scriptural citations and arguments, and in particular those arguments which are the most effective for eliciting a spiritual transformation within your mind. If repeated contemplation of just a single argument seems to pierce your mind with an ever-growing sharpness, like you would feel on hearing that your mother has died, this is a sign that you're succeeding. So continue striving. So these are the things that will happen in our mind as we realize these topics along the path. If they don't happen like this, we won't become bodhisattvas. We love to talk about generating love and compassion and working for others. And that, we're all bodhisattvas, right? We're Sangha and we're bodhisattvas. We love our labels. We love to, put on as many, Buddhist ornaments as we can. I went out and got tattoos and wore multiple malas. Oh boy, we do so many things to just try to label ourselves as something or another. And it's all those labels and elaborations as something that really is or something that isn't at all. They keep us bound, so bound to cyclic existence. So when we look at these topics of recognizing the teacher as the source of all of our good, and recognizing this human life of leisure and opportunity we have is so precious. Okay, I tell you, you have this human life of leisure and opportunity. You have the 8 leisures. You have the 10 opportunities. You have all the factors that are necessary to become a Buddha. You really can. You have this human basis that's free from all these wrong views, and you aren't in the hell realm. You aren't a hungry ghost. You aren't an animal. An animal can't even recite an Om Mani Padme Hum, right? I'm telling you this, right? It sounds so good. It sounds so good to you. That's a correctly assuming consciousness. But does that mean that in a year you're going to wake up in the morning and say, I have this human life, this basis of leisure and opportunity, and wake up in the morning and feel so grateful that you have an opportunity to practice Dharma. Wake up and say, like Nagarjuna said, oh my gosh, it's so strange that I've woken up today. I have this basis that will definitely die. I have this basis I don't know when it's going to die. This basis that I don't know when is going to die because lifespan's not fixed actually has a lot of causes for it being killed out there. There's so many things. You could just start listing them, internally and externally that could end my life at this moment. And we look at how many things could actually extend my life. Not too many, and I'll never extend them. My physical will always end. There's always a physical limitation. Even if I'm I heard a guru say the other day, even if I'm the best jumper in the world and I become as physically conditioned as I possibly can, and I'm the number one jumper, I'll never physically be able to jump from one mountain to another. But my mind has infinite distance. My mind can expand to the state of omniscience. But the only way it can expand to the state of omniscience is by very careful, concentrated steps that arise through analysis and concentration, because the concentration, as we get better and better at it, allows us to analyze things more calmly. Even before we get any shamatha, it's just becoming a calmer being mentally. By practicing calming meditation, our wisdom can be less erratic. Our studies, we can be more focused. We can read a page and not forget it. We won't be leaky pots. Our calming meditations unleaks our pots. Allows us to completely discriminate things in a proper way, because we'll have slowed our minds down enough to be able to see 65 moments in a snap. We'll be able to actually see that happening if we slow our minds down enough to get our consciousness to apprehend things in that kind of full collective way that a mirror would. If a mirror was asked, if it was asked to slow down things to, 1,000 beats in a second, what that mirror would tell us about impermanence. We see things slowed down, right? And then we see a thing grow, or sped up to grow. Imagine if we could slow it down and see everything, all the cells changing in a plant, slowly changing and dying even. If we could see fall in the summer coming because we saw it coming so clearly. And as soon as those leaves came on and were green, we saw them dying. We saw the subtle impermanence. We saw it dying. So our mind has a lot of work to do. And we can learn about this and come to an inference that everything's slowly dying. And then we can calm our minds down enough to see it slowly dying. And that's the way that we do it. That's the way only way it's going to work. And then it says, yeah, I think that's it. I think that makes enough sense out of it for this evening on why we study, why we contemplate things in their pure form. We have to know we know this stuff. Even though these topics sound so simple, when I go back to them in the Lam Rim, after studying now all these years, I look at them through the lens of a little bit of Tantra too, right? And I see different things in this human life of leisure and opportunity. And I see I have this human basis that has leisure and opportunity to achieve the state of Buddhahood in this lifetime. I have the same mind that Milarepa used to become a Buddha in one lifetime. Milarepa, I'm so concerned about my physical and how I look and how I act and make sure I get all the right nutrients and vitamins, and I think that this is going to make my life and make me last forever. And Milarepa ate nettles and became enlightened in one lifetime. We have to remember that. We have to remember the sole focus is on our spiritual awakening. I was reading today that someone said to Drone Tompa, when a teacher was giving teachings, I'm so tired of this. They used to call a teacher the renunciation lama. I'm so tired of this. When's he going to give high, profound teachings? He's always just teaching about abandoning this life, not being attached to this life, not having attachment to cyclic existence. He's always talking about this heart of love and compassion. When are the real profound teachings going to happen? And Drone Tompa just looked at him and said, I'm so sorry you haven't been listening. I'm so sorry. And those profound teachings are in this human life of leisure and opportunity that I can unite the subjective and objective clear light with in this lifetime. In this lifetime, I can somehow realize that final drop in meditation that doesn't cling to things as being phenomena, as being truly established. That I have in my subtlest, most consciousness abiding right now a non-clinging clear light mind. And in this lifetime, I could unite the objective emptiness with that somehow. I don't really understand how that would work right now. They're just words to me right now. They're correctly assuming consciousness. Very dangerous, no? Very dangerous. Because they're just words to me. The only way they become not just words is for me to just really grind it out through analytical meditation and glancing meditation. And it's interesting how the glancing meditation, you learn tonight, it's like a circle. And, as you catch up, maybe you realize the first 4 Lam Rim topics through inference. So your glancing meditation, goes kind of, by the, knows that that's where when you do your glancing meditation, you go by those first 4 topics. So that when you go back to analytical meditation, it's that 5th one that you have to focus on because you've realized the first 4. It's just one big circle, and you have to see the Lam Rim as that. Realize it again and again and again. I feel like we could talk about abandoning the 10 non-virtuous activities for the rest of my life, and it would have such pure relevance. And it was about a decade in when I actually understood what abandoning killing meant, what the ethics of abandoning killing meant. And I'd been a vegetarian for maybe 10 years already or something, and was into PETA and stuff like that, and really against killing. But I didn't understand the ethics of abandoning killing until like a decade of studying Buddhism and swerving to not hit a coyote that I would always do. I would always try to not hit an animal. But I saw my mind actually in slow motion not want to kill and want to love that animal and that animal to be happy. Just for a second, right? And I realized what the ethics of abandoning killing was. The ethics is abandoning harm and the sources of such harm. And I actively did that at that moment for that coyote. I abandoned the source of harm actively. And that's what the ethics that abandon non-virtues does. It actively does that. You see a lie about to be told and you actively tell the truth. Actively. It'd be easier to tell a lie, not later. Not for you later, I promise. You'll have molten copper maybe being poured down your throat. Did that make sense? How'd the lie work? The lie work out for you? We have to realize things like this. Because when we realize the magnification of karma, we get into the Lam Rim a few topics in. If we have an inferential valid cognition of that, that's what'll happen when we're about to tell a lie. When we look at the 10 non-virtues, when we know what their fruition will cause, what will happen? It'll magnify, then it'll turn into this. I'll have this experience, my environment will look like this. From that, sometime or another later, this little lie is going to magnify, turn into a whole experience, give me an environment that sucks to live in, and then make me behave like a jerk again, because I'm familiar with jerkness. We really have to know that to know these topics, to know how they affect us so that we abandon non-virtue. Who would have thought 10 years later that topic I was so bored of hearing became so relevant in my mind? And today at this moment, when I engage in tantric practice, I see that as so relevant. Ethics is the foundation of all excellent qualities. And Nagarjuna says it in the letter to a friend, where he says ethics is like the ground for everything good. All right, that's enough out of me. If you are attached to this life, you are not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you are attached to your own self-interest, you don't have bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you don't have the view. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views, To you, the Buddha, Gautama, I pay homage. And that's the final verse at the of Nagarjuna's Mulya Madhyamika Karika. Very, very beautiful, right? You taught the immaculate Dharma, stainless, pure Dharma, nothing wrong, ultimate truth, to dispel all the things that weren't, just to negate all of these wrong views that you've been taught, all these artificial conceptions of true existence that you think about because someone told you were true. You taught this immaculate Dharma, Buddha, to dispel all these wrong views, because these wrong views are what keep people suffering and not having bliss. It harms sentient beings. These perverted views harm sentient beings. These perverted views are the reason you have to die. The reason you have to have birth, aging, sickness, and death, and be separated from pleasant things, meet with the unpleasant, not get what you want, and have suffering of mental and physical aggregates. Perverted views cause this. The truth, the immaculate Dharma, allows you to be free and have bliss. To the being that taught that, Buddha, Gautama, I pay homage. So profound. So profound. Okay, so we'll make a concluding mandala offering as a thanks to the teacher in the lineage for showing us how to be free from suffering and how to have complete bliss by depending upon the truth that the Buddha has taught. And I want to say again, I apologize to anyone on any of the platforms for me not being able to answer questions. This is a teaching. There are quite a few people on, and I'm just trying to share the pure Dharma with you as it was shared with me so freely and given to me so generously by Kensur Geshe Wandak, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Geshe Dorje Damdu, Geshe Matenzin Ladrin La, Geshe Aga, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, Demalocha Rinpoche, all these holy lamas in the Nyingma Kagyu Sakya and Galup tradition, and then the Indian Pandits have been so kind to have passed this tradition down to share it with us so that we can hear it here in the United States and abroad in such a pure way without wondering if it's right or not. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors to traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. And I pray that in all our lives may we never be separated from Kensur Geshe Wandak in whatever form he or she chooses to show us. Whether it's an emanation body in the realms in which we abide now in the as a normal being, as a learner, or when we see emptiness directly and become Arya Bodhisattvas, may we meet with this pure being in his or her enjoyment body. And then when we become Buddhas, may we help him or her free all sentient beings from suffering by teaching the truth of suchness and showing them how to become Buddhas themselves. Through generating the stages that we will have needed to generate in order for us to be in that state of complete Buddhahood, which is a freedom from all of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience, which is a state of complete fearlessness and bliss. Thank you, everyone. I hope that you use the mirror of the Dharma. I hope that you use these teachings to see whether these realizations are happening in your mind. You use the mirror of the Dharma to see, am I attached to this life? Well, I guess I'm not a spiritual practitioner. And you try to lessen your attachment to this life. Renunciation is developing a desire to definitely emerge from the suffering of cyclic existence. It doesn't mean you don't use the things within cyclic existence. You're just not attached to them because you know that they are within the suffering of change. Use the mirror of the Dharma and change your mind. Thank you, everybody. Hope you're great. We'll talk to you soon. Practice, practice, practice. That's how you get to Carnegie Hall.